Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
It's Black History Month.
Yeah, it is. It's Black History Month. And my favorite thing about this month, the Negro National Anthem. I cannot, during this month, I can never get enough of that song. But especially this month, I look forward to hearing it. Over and singing it, although I cannot hit the high notes. I try.
It does fill you with such pride.
Oh gosh, I love that song. I love that song. And I'm always fascinated and try to learn something that about our history that I didn't know before, also during this month. And there was a fascinating article that I saw that was part on the Oprah website, on Oprah's website, Oprah.com, about, I think it was titled like something like 20 or 25 things I bet you didn't know about Black history. And they didn't feature Martin Luther King and, all of the points that we generally hit over and over and over. They featured lesser known individuals, which was quite a good article. If you get a chance to see it. So there's that I always look forward to. But this year, I did a little something different in that I actually in preparing for this had to go dig stories about my own family, right? Which was quite fascinating. I've not been one of the ones who's on the genealogy websites. I haven't done that yet, right? My husband and my daughter. Yeah, my husband and daughter are into it. I mean, my husband has traced his family back to slavery. I mean, it's fascinating what he's been able to do on his father's side. He hasn't gone as far on his mother's side. And some fascinating stuff he's been able to find. And there are a lot of public documents, if you have the time to sit and dig through them, that you can find information about it. I haven't done that, but you were saying
my nephew is into that as well, and has done a lot of studying on our family. But I have to tell you, I got that for a gift, ancestry search, as I think either a birthday gift or something. And so once I did it, my sole goal was to make sure that I was Oprah Winfrey's long lost sister. And when that didn't show up in my results, I don't know what else it said. It just looked like blah, 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 blah. I was just so disappointed. I was going around telling people I was sure this was going to prove it. Once I didn't see that, I was like, well, a lot of fat good that did me. But anyway, I was done with that. So I may pick it up at some point and actually read the results.
That's funny.
Well, it's true. It is sad, but it's true.
Yeah. That is crazy. That is crazy. But yeah, I'm sure your history is full of rich stories and rich information. I'm sure of it.
You think
because there's got to be there. Yeah, because of who you are. And so I know that, that influences us.
I didn't see any billionaires in there, but anyway, okay.
That is
piqued my
funny.
interest.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
No, honestly, my interest has been piqued into my own family, especially, looking into my father's side of the family, where my brother is very knowledgeable.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the stories that I'd like to share is about my great grandfather.
I'm just
My great
asking. I'm just
grandfather.
asking. I'm just asking. One of the stories. How many you plan on sharing today? Just asking. Asking for a friend. Or was that just a phrase?
You're so funny.
Was that just a phrase
I
we
actually
used?
have two story.
Oh Lordy.
I
Okay,
have
go
two
ahead.
stories. They both
Okay, go
they're
ahead.
both from they're kind of a continuation of the first story. It's a
Okay.
continuation because
All righty.
it's about my great grandfather. My great grandfather. And boy, you are in a mood today.
I didn't
What
sleep
is
that
going on?
well. I need more sleep. Okay, go
I
on.
can tell. Well, let me ask you this. Do we need to take a break for you to get your coffee?
No, no. Let's just roll on. I'm a professional. Okay. I know my job. Let's go.
Okay. Okay. So my great grandfather was a landowner. Can you I'm trying to get with that, right? When I
Yeah.
say landowner, I'm talking hundreds of acres. I'm
What?
trying to get with that. Yeah, how did
Yeah. I
how?
was
I
about to
want to
say,
know.
how did
My
that
curiosity
happen?
piqued. How did it happen? I haven't a clue. I don't know. I got to figure
Wow.
that out. My brother didn't know either. So he was a landowner. He had two sons and three daughters, and he left the land split between the two sons, right? And
Hmm.
but he was a farmer, and what he was known for was cane syrup. Apparently, he had a recipe for cane syrup that, and back then you made and you grew everything that you
Right,
ate
right,
or
right,
wore,
right,
right?
right.
And so it was not uncommon for many of the farmers to have their own cane syrup making equipment, and it wasn't uncommon for them to do that. But his recipe,
From the
whatever he
cane,
did, was so special.
from the
Cane
cane
syrup.
stalks, from the cane stalks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh,
He
uh-huh,
grew his own cane stalks.
uh-huh.
He made his own cane syrup, and so did many people. So that was not special. That wasn't the special part of it. The special part of his cane syrup story is that he had a special recipe that everyone wanted. So consequently, he had lines of folks coming whenever on the days that he made cane syrup, coming to get
What?
their portion of his batch, right, of cane syrup. So, I mean, and people driving by would stop to see what's going on. That's just not driving by, or however it would, whatever the mode of transportation was, horse and buggy. I would assume they would stop to see what was why were people gathering, at this place.
Hmm.
Now, this was happening in the early 30s. Well, my father was born 1944. He was born in 1944. And my great grandfather was still alive at that time and still making cane syrup, but he was born in 1888. So
Hmm.
he was a older gentleman by then, and he taught my dad. He had my dad helping him, and there's a photograph that was made into a postcard of my dad with a mule helping my great grandfather. I don't know if it's mill the syrup. I don't know what the
Hmm.
proper term is to creating the syrup. Well, as the story goes,
Hmm.
the postcard became famous. The gentleman that snapped the picture of them, put it on a postcard, and it became it became a sought after postcard that was sold at a local general store.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, it was actually featured in talking about it. It started being featured in news stories about cane syrup. it made him even more and more famous. So white people
Mm-hmm.
and black people alike came to this location, and the local county made it a where the spot where the syrup was being made, they marked it as a landmark.
Oh, wow.
And
That's huge.
yeah, yeah, and so the place that the place where that landmark is land that is now owned by my cousin. My like I think I mentioned early on that the land that he owned was split between the two
Mm-hmm.
brothers.
Mm-hmm.
The other, my my grandfather's brother son, he owns that land today.
Mm.
But in the family, there's only a fraction of the acres remaining in our family, which is tragic to me.
Oh, okay.
That's the
Okay.
tragic part of the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
If people had understood the value of land ownership back in those days, I could likely be Oprah.
I know. That's what I'm
Think
thinking.
about
You actually had some people in your family, yeah. But probably,
right,
it's
right.
it's like you say, it's a tragedy that they had to sell. They sold off the land, but they were probably trying to survive. Um,
Survive,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Manage, yeah. So,
Absolutely. And if they had if industry were then what it is now, we that syrup would probably be bottled. And who knows if someone did not take his recipe very
right.
much
That's
in
what
the
I was
same
thinking.
way
Right, right,
as that his recipe could be being made right now because they were not educated people,
right, right,
and they were just like you said, making a living and making a
right,
living off the land,
right.
you know. Uh,
Mm.
so I'm sure there are many stories like this. We were, you know, I anyway. I'm not going to finish that story, but I'm not going
Yeah,
to finish with that statement. Rather,
yeah.
I
Huh.
don't think it was a proper thing to say. But yeah,
Mm.
you just don't know. You just don't know. But I was fascinated, and I couldn't get enough of my brother sharing what he
Right,
learned
right.
from my uncle and my daddy even. I knew the story about the syrup, but I didn't know. And I talked to my mom about the postcard, and she told me, "Yep, it's true." And
Wow.
that got me to thinking more that, the more people that were hanging around him, I wonder if someone got
Yeah,
his recipe, and they're
yeah.
now making his syrup. But we have no way to prove that.
Right, right, right.
Hmm.
Mm. Well, I tell you, when I thought about, what we were going to talk about today, I thought about Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns. And I don't know if you've read it, but in that book, that's the one where she talks about African Americans migrating from the South to the North for a better life. And that was a big thing growing up, particularly for me and my family in South Carolina, seeing our relatives, move to the North. So I wanted to find out, since we were talking about finding out our family's history, I wanted to find out, okay, what happened in my family. And so I wanted to share about what that looked like, the migration in my family. So my father had 7 sisters and 2 brothers, and his 2 brothers moved north when they got out of the service. Now, 5 of his sisters also moved north. And I was quite young when they all migrated from South Carolina to the North. So I had to I called my cousin Renee to ask her, Renee, what happened? Because I know she lived with them in DC. So Renee said, from what she could remember, she said, "Well, Lou, they didn't tell you the stories. They didn't share a lot, and so I remember what I picked up as a little girl. Being around them and listening in on their conversations." And she said they all wanted to move north because, of course, the North allowed them more exposure to a better life and more opportunities. And my Aunt Louise was the first female to migrate from South Carolina. And she went to New York. Now, I don't know what contact Aunt Louise had in New York, but that was the first one to leave. Then my Aunt May, she later joined my Aunt Louise in New York. But in New York, she married my Uncle Tommy and moved to Washington, D.C. Now, Uncle Tommy, her husband, he was a cook and he was a Freemason. And he supported her and put her through cosmetology school. And so she had a long career as a hairstylist in Washington. And they were the first couple that actually migrated to DC in my family to own their own home in the North. And they bought a house through their work in an area where mostly Black professionals live, doctors and lawyers in DC. It was on Luray Street. But after leaving South Carolina, my Aunt Gussie migrated. She migrated and she married my Uncle Benny. Now, the unique thing about them, they settled in DC, but my Aunt Gussie and Uncle Benny, they could pass for white. I mean, you wouldn't know they were African Americans. That was just I mean, their skin was so light skinned. And Aunt Gussie got a job as an elevator operator. Now, that doesn't sound like much to us now, but in years ago, it was in a very prestigious building. And, where she had access to, there were law firms in the building and real estate companies in the building. So she was exposed to those type of professionals in that area. But the interesting one was my Aunt Thelma when she migrated from South Carolina. She migrated from South Carolina to Washington, D.C., where she met my uncle. We called him Mr. Monroe. I don't know why, but that's what everybody called him. But he was my uncle. And he ran the city dump truck for the city in D.C. And he ran a dump truck for years, and they bought a house, which the Metro, they needed it for the new route that they were going to run the bus, system through in DC. So they bought their house and they got paid a pretty substantial sum. So when they got paid for the house, they actually had enough money to buy another house and to buy his own dump truck. And when he bought his own dump truck, he was able to contract out and do quite well financially. So much so that Aunt Thelma never worked outside the home, that she kept the books for their company. So I thought, well, I never knew that. And, when I would go visit them, I could tell that they lived well. And I didn't know the basis for that, but to find out that they were industrious enough to save their money and to buy his own dump truck to start his business. So I thought that was pretty good stuff.
Yeah, that's
I
fascinating.
didn't find that Oprah was in my history, but I found some things through my aunts that I was most proud of, because I remember as a little girl that my mom, had sisters and I loved them dearly, but they were sort of the earth kind of women. They stayed in church all the time and that was just our life. But my aunts from DC, I saw them as just elegant. They just seemed more sophisticated, more educated, and they just seemed, like I said, elegant somehow. And I think it was because of what they've been exposed to and the different opportunities in New York and Washington, D.C. for home ownership to get access to different resources. So I learned a bit about that.
What you trying to say? You got to give up Christianity
I
to be
did not see
industrious
that.
and
See there.
elegant.
Not see there. Now, why we got to go there?
What do
I'm
you?
not saying that, but my point is that sometimes we could be stuck in church all the time and we don't learn other things that are critical to a balanced life. So make of that what you will. Okay. You know how they say you can be so heavenly bound, you're no earthly good.
Yeah.
You know, that was the thing
Oh
I was
gosh,
trying to make.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yes.
yeah. So,
I
but
know. I'm just
listen,
kidding with
I
you.
wanted to blow back from my family. I'm not in any way. Seriously, you get me in trouble. I'm not trying to say my aunts in South Carolina were like that, but we did stay in church from sun up to sundown. I'm just saying.
But yeah, so that's a great story, Lou. My grandfather's brother was not into farming in the same way that my grandfather was. So my grandfather used the land to farm, his land that
Mm-hmm.
he was given, left by
Mm-hmm.
his father to farm.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, and I'm not sure how, but he grew a pepper, a bell pepper. We thought, but it actually was a unique species of pepper that was used to make the piment pimentos. Like
What?
it was a pimento pepper, yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And about they were hard to grow. Pimento peppers were hard to grow, and many farmers did not want to deal with them. Um, but my grandfather did, and his peppers were bought by a company called Pomona Products,
Wow.
and they were used. Yeah. And that company at the time employed a lot of the people to work,
Mm-hmm.
because to make, the pimentos, the little red peppers that
Yeah.
are stuck in olives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
That, and
Teresa,
the pepper had to.
sometimes you act like I'm an idiot. I know what a pimento is. I may not know all the other fancy little foods you like to eat and throw out there, but I know what a pimento is, for goodness sake. She acts like I'm an idiot
Look, I think
because I
I
don't know her
deserve
little
that, didn't I?
foo foods she likes to eat. Whatever. I will not be treated like an
Lou,
idiot on this show because I don't know the little fancy little things
okay,
you know. Oh, I need some sleep, I think.
okay. Point, point. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Point taken. No more early morning recordings where Lou doesn't have her coffee
Ah, okay, come
first.
on. Come on.
So, so it was an intricate job to do that, right?
Yeah.
By hand. So
Yeah.
now, and so many of my family members, I learned, and worked at that. On my mother's side, her sister her sister worked at that plant. She was
Mhm.
one of the workers. What happened was a bug or a weevil or some sort of infestation came along and impacted many of the farmers who farmed this pepper. My grandfather
Yeah.
was actually not the only one.
Yeah.
He was likely, I can't confirm this, the only black farmer,
Right. Uh-huh.
but he was not the only farmer. There were
Right.
20 other of them, but my grandfather went out of business because of this
Oh.
bug that
Yeah.
infested the
Yeah.
crop, which
Yeah.
impacted the industry and the Pomona products.
Oh.
So, but my grandfather continued to grow the peppers, and he sold them locally, but no making nowhere near the money he did for by selling it to industry. So I
Wow.
thought that was a very interesting story, and I
Yeah.
do remember playing in those fields.
Yeah.
The fields went on forever and
Yeah.
ever, and we
Wow.
literally would pick the peppers and just eat them right out
Yeah.
in the field. But an
Yeah.
interesting thing, I wondered how the pimento peppers are being stuffed today.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
googled it like
Mhm.
everything else.
Yeah.
And so I just want people to know, and I hope people listen to this, that um the pepper that you're eating is manufactured in many cases, unless it says it's handmade.
Wow.
So in order to get the pepper in there now, they pulverize it, they puree it, and they add gums to it to create this strip that is then shot through the pepper
Mhm.
with with a device, with a
Mm-hmm.
mechanical device. So it's
Mm-hmm.
no longer, unless it says it on the label,
Mm-hmm.
pure pepper, just a strip of pepper, which I was mortified to learn.
And you
I'm
know
like,
what, folks? You know
you
what,
can't
folks?
trust anything.
And you know what, folks? See, the disadvantage from us not having video is that when Teresa tells you stuff like that and says she's mortified, I wish you could see her face. Like that's the end of the world what they've done. And I know it is, but I'm sitting there like, really,
It
Teresa? See,
is.
this is what I'm saying about her little foo-foo stuff she has. Okay, whatever. Okay, sorry, Teresa. That is earth shattering what they have
No,
done to the pimento. I vote we have a revolt on that, Teresa. How dare they?
well, I'm telling you, how can they call it a pimento
I don't know.
if
We,
it's not what it is?
it is
So that's
not.
what I'm
And
talking about
I
when
am
it comes
so
to
glad
food.
you have
We
gotten to
need
the
to know what we're
bottom of
eating.
this. I'm so glad you got to the bottom of that, Teresa. I'm going to be thinking about that all day.
I am not recording with you when you don't have your coffee any longer. I'm going on a strike.
Okay. I get it. Okay. That's a good one, though,
All
Teresa.
right. All right. All right. Folks, we encourage you to, if you've not gone down that track, to go ahead and try to find out more about your families. I'm sure there's some interesting stories and we'd love to hear them.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
if you don't mind, share some of them with us.
Yeah. Because so often we talk about, not getting family recipes and, people dying and we didn't learn how to make things that signal traditions in our family. Well, our history is important. So it's important that we share our stories and that we take the time to sit down with the elders in our families and hear about their lives because just as Teresa said, it's fascinating. Yeah.
One such elder, though not a family member, but certainly a church family member, is Miss May. Miss May sat down with us last February to share with us the story of her life. Please continue to listen to a brief excerpt from that interview. In this excerpt, Miss May shares a story about her first job at the early age of 12 and how the person who employed her became an ally. Enjoy.
I had to work too sometime because there was a lady who lived in our neighborhood that made wedding dresses, and she had been to Paris, France, and whatever. So I would just go over to her house and pick up the pins off the floor. And she was very good to me and always make my dresses. So the kids around me got very upset because I wore these dresses out of remnants.
Oh.
Yeah. And these were like store-bought dresses.
Yeah.
And they thought I was trying to be better than they were. That was what happened during those days. That kids, if you had a little better wardrobe than they did, they'd get jealous and they'd say things about you. They didn't mean it. They didn't know any better. But anyway, she made all my dresses. She made a wedding dress for the governor of Louisiana's daughter. And she took me with her. My mother dressed me up that day. I had a big ball ribbon in my hair and one of those fairing dresses that she had made me. And we got to the governor's mansion. They told her that I could not go in the door with her. I'd have to go to the back door.
Wow.
And she said she will not. She's with me. So she took me by the hand. We went in and they served tea and cookies to her, and they said, we'll bring her an extra glass or cup. And she says, no, she can drink out of my cup and glass. So she would drink, and she'd tell me to have a sip too. But the governor's wife and a couple other women there were very upset because she was doing that. She says, this is my little girl. Oh. And she says, she's with me every day, and we're going to treat her like she's my little girl. So I felt very good and very proud of myself that I was with her, because no one else had ever been there. Black had never been in that part of the house that we were in.
If you would like to hear the rest of Miss May's story, please listen to the podcast titled Thank You, Miss May, recorded in February of 2020. Hopefully, you've been inspired by this episode. We would love for you to share your stories with us at earringsoff@gmail.com. Take good care.